Hi, Greg Alderman. Welcome to One Voice Board. Today we're going to talk about principle number 3, speak with one voice. Now, this is not one that is normally understood by the average board member, so maybe you aren't quite sure what it means. So I want you to take the opportunity right now to pause the playback and just jot down for yourself on a piece of paper or maybe on your tablet or your phone, what does speak with one voice mean to you? And when you're ready, go ahead and hit the playback. All right, speaking with one voice. If you've ever been to a concert where there's a lot of different noises taking place and then all of a sudden it gels, everybody starts to sing the same note in unison, even in tune. Whenever you've heard a good choir or a good quartet of singers, or the instruments of an orchestra, and you hear them playing well and in concert with one another, that's what speak with one voice means. They're all playing from the same notes. They're all singing the same words. And the harmony and the meaning and the message of the music becomes understandable. If they're not singing the same words, if they're not playing the same notes, what happens to the message of the song? It gets muddled. Well, that is a perfect illustration of what we mean by the board speaking with one voice. The name of this ministry is Speak with One Voice. If you've looked at the banner on our website, it says a quote of Exodus 24, verse 3. And Exodus 24, verse 3 is the story of Moses, of course, going up to meet with the Lord, and then coming down and speaking the laws, the regulations that the Lord had given him to the people. And in Exodus 24, verse 3, it says this: When Moses went and told the people all the Lord's words and laws, they responded with one voice, "Everything the Lord has said, we will do." Now, you don't have to read the story of Exodus to know that they didn't keep that up for very long. But the principle does matter. They need to speak with one voice. You see, God's purpose for the people in Exodus was that they would be a light to the nations. And the way they were going to be that light to the nations was speaking with one voice what the Lord said he wanted to the nations. You see, that was God's desire, that the world would know through his people, and that the world would know when we speak with one voice. If you've ever read John 17, verses 20 to 23, Jesus' prayer, the high priestly prayer, and specifically his prayer for unity, it also hits the one voice principle. You see, Jesus prays that we would be one with the Father, that we would speak with one voice, not our voice, but that we would speak with the Father's voice. You see, when we make decisions as a board, and when we pass policy, because that's what our decisions are, we are speaking with one voice to the world, we're speaking with one voice to our congregation, and we're speaking with one voice to our pastor about what we expect that pastor to do. You see, one voice is us acting as a whole, not as individuals. In fact, the one voice principle is very clear on this. It's a value. We don't speak as individuals on behalf of the board. The only time the board speaks is when it speaks together. And everything else, all the deliberations that we have, all the thoughts that are expressed within the context of a board meeting are simply those: opinions, ideas, comments. They don't become something the board has said until we make a decision together by consensus, principle 2. And then we speak that decision with one voice, which means when we go out to the world, when we go out to the congregation, and when we speak to the pastor, we speak with one voice. Let me give you an example of what we mean by this. When a board makes a decision, I've seen this happen and you have too. When a board makes a decision, they don't value this principle. And there's dissenting voices. The dissenting voices will often walk out into the congregation, and when confronted, they'll say, yeah, I didn't have anything to do with that decision. That was those guys. If we have the value of speaking with one voice, that should never happen. And if we have the opinion, as the minority voice, that we haven't been heard, then we haven't really practiced consensus either. You see, principles 2 and 3 go hand in hand. If we've really done our decision-making well, making decisions by consensus, by listening to the owner, principle 1, then it's natural that we would speak with one voice. This is vital to the trust that a board needs to create amongst its members. Now, some have experienced the concept of the one voice as suppressing or stifling differences of opinion. And once again, when that's taking place, that's actually the abuse of the one voice principle. That means we haven't done principle 2 well. You see, the idea of the one voice is that we would be consistent and in harmony with one another and speak with the same notes and the same way of playing that is consistent so that the song is understood. Let me go back to the orchestra or the choir example or the quartet example. I want you to imagine a vigorous debate among the musicians and the singers about how to do the arrangement. Can you imagine if they never came to agreement on how to do the arrangement? The sound would be horrible. Imagine if one of them continued to insist on playing their instrument in a slightly different way for that arrangement than the one that was agreed on by the rest of the group. The sound would literally be, as it says in 1 Corinthians 13, a clanging cymbal, a resounding gong, a horrible scratchy noise in our ears, rather than the harmony of one voice. And there's a lot that can be said on this, and I would love to visit with you and talk with you more about it if you're interested. And you can always find out more from, if you want to talk to me about it, greg@onevoiceboard.org. But I want to leave you with this. And it comes from Romans chapter 15, verses 5 and 6. And listen to what Paul says to the Roman Christians. Through the work of the Spirit, inspiring him to write these words not only to them, but to you. May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind toward each other that Jesus Christ had, so that with one mind and one voice, you may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. Brothers, my prayer, and sisters, my prayer is for you to speak as a board with one voice so that you glorify Jesus Christ, the owner.